What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, I want to kind of put a video together right quick just to show you how stupid something makes you look when you have derangement syndrome, right? These people on corporate press, they're so deranged with Russia. They're so deranged with Donald Trump. They connect the two as if they go together. Putin is the master in chief of Donald Trump, blah, 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 that they can't see the forest for all the trees that are in the way, right? This is what they do. Check this out.
Donald Trump says, let's let Russia back into the G7. Donald Trump is reportedly preparing right now for his own big in-person summit with Vladimir Putin. Donald Trump already started high-level meetings between the Russian and U.S. governments, including an inexplicable 3.5-hour meeting specifically between the president's real estate friend and Vladimir Putin himself. Steve Witkoff came back from that meeting and how'd that go? Went pretty well for someone. Headline, parroting Putin and Trump, Witkoff says Russia was provoked into invading Ukraine. Headline, Trump envoy can't name a single concession Russia will make in peace deal. What does it seem like is going on here?
Peace negotiations. Yes, peace negotiations. That is what is going on here. You cannot, once again, it makes no sense. This shows how stupid these people are. It makes no sense for you to lambaste somebody and then try to go into negotiate with that same person. It makes no sense. You got somebody fighting a war over here, regardless of who started, it doesn't matter. We're trying to get to the table to form some sort of a ceasefire agreement, right? You can't supply this one side with weapons and say, oh, well, the other guy's a dictator. He's the evil person. He's a bad guy. And just banish them from everything that is the, finances in the world, trade, everything. Try to push them out, to try to put them in a box, and then go to the negotiating table and say, please, will you work with me here? That's not how negotiations work. These people are so stupid and so deranged that they can't seem to see the forest for all the trees in the way. They don't want peace, obviously, otherwise they would be able to see what Donald Trump is trying to do here, right? Even Zelensky doesn't want peace. He comes over, tries to make, Donald Trump proposes this mineral deal to give Ukraine weapons, even though they're about to go into peace negotiations, right? Zelensky wants security guarantees. Well, that's tantamount to being put into NATO, for crying out loud. Security guarantees at this point. Then you're going to try to go negotiate with the other guy, the aggressor in this whole thing? Like, that makes absolutely no sense. What the hell are you people thinking, right? Like, please continue to do this because you're showing exactly why. People are losing faith in the corporate press. People don't like these narratives because they don't make sense. When you try to sit back and think about what's actually going on here, it makes absolutely no sense for these people to keep pushing this narrative, to keep putting out this idea that, Russia's evil for the sake of being evil, but yet we need to go have some peace talks. They don't want peace. It's clear from that. All they want to do is they want regime change in Russia. Well, you know what? I'm sure a lot of people do. And I'm sure you get everybody over here in the United States, if for some reason there was a coup in Russia and Putin were to be taken down, I'm sure nobody would bat a freaking eye. We would all cheer. Everybody, all the way across the board. But, we also over here on this side, we look at reality. That's probably not going to happen at this point, considering the authoritarian nature of Putin's regime. It's probably not going to happen. So, what do we need to do? We need to try to work with these people. But they can't see that. They just want to continually supply weapons until every last Ukrainian has bitten the dust. But let's get into it. I got a news article for you guys, dipping in a little bit further, and what Europe is doing now that all these negotiations have fallen apart already. Check this out, y'all. European leaders chart new Ukraine peace talks path after Oval Office debacle. Once again, I talked about this in my last video. This is why people are losing faith in the corporate press. When you use qualifiers like debacle. All right, let's get into this thing and see what Semaphore has to say. Now, read that top little subheader right there. It says, the news. Let's see just how unbiased this is. Check it out. Kyiv's European allies gather in London Sunday for talks aimed at crafting a peace plan for Ukraine after a disastrous meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky left the future of the continent in the face of Russian aggression uncertain. Is that so? You gotta love this. Like, these people just totally ignore the history of Ukraine, right? And they just say, oh, it's Russian aggression, and leave it at that. Like, most people in the United States, most of your average everyday people, don't know about why Putin invaded. They just think it's an unprompted illegal invasion, and the ICC needs to come in and bring him to criminal court. He's a war criminal, for crying out loud. They don't know the history. They don't realize the nuance to this. There's a lot of nuance to this. And this is why I don't think we need to be involved in this whatsoever. France and the UK have stepped into the breach. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and French President Emmanuel Macron said they would present a peace plan to Washington, but stressed that a resolution to the conflict would require a U.S. backstop to deter Russia from violating the terms of the deal. So, once again, we're relying on the United States here. They're trying to put their own peace plan together, but still need the help from the United States to make sure Russia does. Well, you know what? If you give a plan that is equally agreeable to both sides, right? Something we can both agree on, and we all keep up our end of the bargain here, then we don't have to worry about that. If NATO doesn't encroach upon Russia's sphere of influence, for crying out loud, we don't have to worry about that. If the government in Ukraine stops bombing these people, for crying out loud, and cutting off water supply to Crimea, having coups and all this other stuff, maybe we can keep some peace. Signals. U.S.-Ukraine mineral deal stalled for now. After weeks of momentum, Washington views talks with Ukraine as on hold after Friday's meltdown. You like how they call that, a meltdown? The ball is in Zelensky's court, a Trump administration official told NBC. Zelensky has to come back to the table, and he has to be the one to come and make it right. What that means is unclear. Zelensky had to come to Washington to sign a mineral deal that Kyiv hoped would give the U.S. enough of a stake in the conflict that it would help Ukraine negotiate a peace deal on its terms rather than Moscow's. Russian economic outlet The Bell wrote, "What sense does that make? How do you go into peace negotiation and say, oh, well, they don't get nothing. You got to come in on my terms. My terms. Not terms that are agreeable to both sides." Once again, this is something these people just don't want to understand, because this is not rocket science, folks. These are very simple concepts. If you want peace, you've got to make concessions. They don't want Ukraine to make any concessions at all. As a matter of fact, they've said it before, that they want the start of the negotiations to be that Ukraine must get back all their territory, including Crimea. Well, at this point, that's not that easy. That means Russia gives up its naval base in Crimea. That's what that would have to mean. That's not a very good place to start peace negotiations, right? Not saying that they can't get those things, but you don't start the qualifier to come to the table with, I'm getting everything I want, or I'm not talking to you, when you're the one that needs the peace negotiation. Russia could probably continue this for a while. It makes no sense. These people can't seem to see that. They just, once again, they want to portray Russia as just the ultimate evil over here, and Ukraine, it hasn't done anything wrong at all, when that could not be further from the truth, right? None of what Ukraine done, right, justifies Russian military coming in and invading like they did. I will say that right from the jump on this. It's not justifiable at this point. Because there are many mechanisms that Russia didn't try to stop the conflict that was going on in Ukraine before they invaded. Maybe they did, I just didn't hear about them. Maybe so. Maybe I'm just a little bit uninformed on this. I can't say that I go around reading the history of southeastern Ukraine and Russia, for crying out loud, right? But, I do look into history a lot, and I have looked into this a little bit. And, from what I can tell, it doesn't seem like Russia was justified to go in, but that doesn't mean that there wasn't a reason to go in, right? Because there was a lot of conflict and crisis going on in that region, right? The Ukrainian people was getting close to an ethnic cleansing, because that area is mostly ethnic Russian anyway. They're Russian speaking. Ukraine outlawed the Russian language, for crying out loud. And look what they've done since the war. They've banned the church, Christian Orthodox Church in Ukraine. They've banned churches, so you don't have freedom of expression. You don't have freedom of religion, I'm sorry. They consolidated the media into state-run media as a propaganda outlet, if you will. That's not freedom of the press. You don't have freedom of speech. They're conscripting people. It's insane what's going on, but the American news media doesn't tell you any of these things, any of it at all. And, they stopped the election, too, which they do have a somewhat ground to stand on that. When there's martial law, there's a war going on, right? They have shaky ground, because you could still hold elections, for crying out loud. But, I do get the idea, the argument that, that there's a lot of soldiers in conflict. They can't vote. There's been 7 million people flee from Ukraine. They can't vote. Refugees, in other words. So there's a lot of people that don't have the ability to vote. That's why they didn't hold the election. I kind of get that. They could still hold the election, but it is what it is. I'm not going to make an argument on that point, because there's kind of no point, right? Because there's a pretty good reason not to hold elections. They still could have done it, but, it is what it is. But with the mineral deal abandoned, Trump could pursue talks with Russia without Ukraine at the table, or he washes his hands of the entire conflict. Yeah, and he might do that at this point, considering the disrespect that Zelensky showed in that meeting. For crying out loud, Europe has an opportunity to finally step up. Oh, you hear that? Finally, for Europe, the geopolitical fallout presents a meaningful but fraught opening to finally take a leading role in its own future. Yeah, maybe they should have been more heavily involved from the beginning. Maybe they shouldn't have sacked peace negotiations in the first place, because that's exactly what happened. European officials have talked about seizing frozen Russian assets and hiking defense spending, but action is lacking. The gulf between words and actions telegraphs weakness to the Kremlin, the economists argued, stressing that Europe must meet the moment or else. Yeah, that's right. And once again, you don't start from seizing frozen Russian assets as a negotiating tactic. That's ridiculous. For crying out loud. You're trying to put a leg up. You want to go into peace negotiations on good faith. That doesn't seem like good faith when you're trying to steal Russian property, for crying out loud. That's what that telegraphs to me, at least, right? You got frozen Russian assets over here, and you're going to we're just going to take control of these and blah, 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 do whatever. We're going to raise up defense spending. Now, raising up the defense spending, yeah, that's a good idea. That shows strength, once again. But stealing Russian assets that are frozen? No, sorry. That's not any incentive for Putin to say, yeah, they're working in good faith. Sorry. It's just not how people work. It's insane, For the continent, nothing less than the future of its security order is at stake, Die Welt wrote, noting that the UK is setting the tone for what could be a cohesive European security policy. But whether it's enough to convince the US to keep providing some security guarantee, however, remains to be seen. Russia is gleeful while Ukraine is exhausted. Oh, you love that, huh? Are they gleeful? Really? Do you really think that seeing, Volodymyr Zelensky just get his butt handed to him in the White House is making him gleeful, for crying out loud? Do we think that that's a serious subheader right there? Like, really? The blow-up between the U.S. and Ukraine could give Russian leader Vladimir Putin the kind of ammunition he needs to prolong the fight, the New York Times wrote. Putin could expand Russia's military push on the front lines as Moscow holds out for a deal on its terms. Especially if the U.S. ends or downgrades its support to Kyiv, analysts warned. Once again, they're seeing this as adversarial instead of trying to look at it as like, we need peace here. We need to come together on this. They just want to see a vindictive Ukraine win, and that's it. That's ridiculously stupid, in my opinion. Once again, like Trump said, they're playing around with World War III. They don't seem to care at all. Kremlin officials were apparently gleeful after Friday's disastrous meeting and the subsequent Republican calls for Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky to resign, a longtime goal of Moscow's. Ukrainians, meanwhile, are confronted with no good options, the Financial Times wrote. Many would probably welcome peace, even though they assume that no settlement can resolve the Russian threat for good. For now, they are just waiting to see which way the great powers move. Yeah, that's right. They are. But you know what? They could have done something much longer ago, if you will, instead of now that, Vladimir Zelensky has come in and disrespected the United States, because that is exactly what has happened. The corporate press and the mainstream news, they're trying to portray this like, oh, well, Donald Trump just admonished him for no reason. No, the guy was being disrespectful to the United States. He was coming in expecting support, pretty much demanding security guarantees. How do you come in to try to sign a mineral deal to get weapons so you can prolong this fight? That's all they want, once again. And he was mad because he couldn't get those security guarantees, and he started disrespecting the Oval Office, disrespecting the United States, and J.D. Vance finally said, screw it. You haven't even said thank you for any of this at all. And, once again, Vladimir Zelensky, instead of being like, I apologize, we do appreciate what's going on, we're trying to work this deal out, he gets combative with everybody and even more disrespectful by saying, oh, no, you're going to feel pressure. You are going to feel pressure. You have these oceans, and you think you're protected, but not for long. Like, come on, dude, really? It's his sole responsibility to try to negotiate some peace. And he screwed that up right here. Absolutely blew it when it comes to peace. Thinking that we're just going to give him weapons and get disrespected in the process. No, I'm sorry. Trump is back, y'all. America is back. Peace through strength. That's what we're going to get. As a matter of fact, it blows my mind that he was that disrespectful. It really does. And it still blows my mind that the mainstream news is trying to portray this as a debacle. Yeah, a debacle for Ukraine. Maybe. But, once again, putting Zelensky in his place. This guy's taken so much money from the United States, and it hasn't really shown us the respect that we deserve, as a matter of fact. But that's neither here nor there at this point, because, I think Donald Trump showed him a thing or two about what the United States peace through strength means. Yeah, you don't come in and disrespect our house, as a matter of fact. But I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. Blows my mind. Y'all stay tuned for my next video. I'm going outside of politics on this next one for the first time. So y'all make sure and check that out. Smash that like button, by the way. Let me know what you think about all this down in the comment section. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.